To Fox News Alert, today in Georgia, Donald Trump's election interference case will be back in court to hear motions from both sides.
Meanwhile, DA Fani Willis firing back at Republicans seeking info about her use of federal funds, saying, quote, "Nothing you do will derail the efforts of my staff and I to bring election interference prosecution to trial so that a jury of Fulton County citizens can determine the guilt or innocence of the defendants."
Our next guest initiated the push to remove Willis from this case against Trump and his co-defendants, and one of whom she represents.
All right, joining us back with us again, attorney Ashley Merchant. Ashley, great to see you.
Good to see you.
Does this require you be in court today?
Yes, but luckily our judge has embraced Zoom, so a lot of us can appear by Zoom, which really helps things a lot. So I'm not primarily arguing, so I'll be on Zoom.
Arguing for what? What are you looking to do today?
Yeah, so there's two motions that are going to be heard today. The first one is a motion to dismiss based on First Amendment grounds. And that motion so Donald Trump's lawyer is arguing that, Steve Sadow, and he's going to be arguing that the First Amendment should prohibit this prosecution. And it's really a couple different First Amendment issues that we've got. We've got the freedom to associate, the freedom to petition the government, the freedom to speak. So all of this conduct that's part of this indictment is really covered by the First Amendment. And if you think about it, it makes sense that a judge should be the one that protects that right, because you shouldn't have to go in front of a jury to protect your constitutional rights. So that's the first one we're going to hear. But then the second one is called a demurrer. And in Georgia, a demurrer is really a motion to dismiss. And what we're trying to do is argue, and that's Mr. Schaefer's motion. He's primarily arguing that. And he was the Georgia GOP leader at the time and also one of the alternate electors. So when you look at the indictment, you see a lot of language that says fake electors, things like that, duly elected, fraudulent. And those are legal conclusions. And so we're trying to have those dismissed, saying that the state can't just put those legal conclusions in there. That's something that a jury has to decide.
You know, Counselor, I'm curious, and obviously, I mean, we saw it for our screen, and our viewers saw what happened in the courtroom with Fani Willis. The case was laid out. They lied under oath. But my question is, why not keep them on the case? They've been very sloppy with their filings, out of control. From a legal standpoint, it would seem like they're easy to beat.
Well, you know, and that was kind of one of the discussions you have to talk about when you're determining whether or not to file one of these motions. We truly don't believe that someone else, if we had a neutral and detached person, someone who didn't have an actual financial interest, that they would bring these charges, particularly against my client. You know, the things that's important, I think, to always remember is my client was not recommended for indictment by the special purpose grand jury. So, you know, this indictment was unnecessarily expanded. And I think if we had someone who's neutral and they went back and looked at it, they may not bring this indictment.
That's interesting.
You know, the country got to know you and what I consider to be Fulton County's finest on display with having Fani Willis on the stand and all the attitude that came from it. And then we get this decision that kind of, as people have said, split the baby. But the judge did grant the opportunity to appeal. And so what does the appeal look like? Is there something specific that you all feel like you can appeal and get her off the case?
Oh, yeah, I think we have some really strong issues on appeal. So our appeal is going to focus on the factual findings that the judge already made. And if you look at that order, you can tell he made some really strong factual findings that support a conflict. So we're going to be arguing that his decision actually should have gone farther and it should have actually disqualified her because he gave us all the factual findings we need. We just now need a court to say that's too much. That's enough. She's got to be disqualified. And if that happens, then we'll get a neutral prosecutor to be able to go and review this and decide whether or not they're even going to bring these charges again.
Ashley, let me ask you about the human side of this because, you know, your client, Donald Trump, the former president, he's on trial. This is, of course, part of a greater coordinated effort to not let people vote for him in the coming election. But this is very high stakes. And we were just talking earlier, he's taking time out of his schedule to come to the funeral, the wake for this police officer. He's got campaign obligations. He's got other cases in other states. What's his mental state? And he seems to be handling it so well. How does he compare to other clients who are under this kind of pressure?
Well, my client, I represent Michael Roman, so I'm part of the team that they represent Donald Trump. But this is immensely stressful for everyone. I mean, as you can imagine, being charged with a crime where you could potentially go to prison, I can't imagine much greater stress. It's one of the most stressful situations in the entire world. And, you know, having to think about going in front of a jury and putting your fate in the hands of 12 people, that's extremely stressful. Having to deal with all these different court hearings is extremely stressful. And for President Trump, that's even, you know, confounded by the fact that he's got all these different jurisdictions that he's got to answer to. I mean, you could see it in the conflict letters. There were some conflict letters filed earlier this week where he's telling one judge, I've got to be here, and another judge, I've got to be here. That's stressful. Anytime you're supposed to be more than one place and you're one human being, that's stressful. Then coupled with the fact that all of these have serious legal ramifications, that's a full-time job for someone.
Yeah. Seems almost impossible.
Which is probably part of the plan of all this.
Yeah, for sure.
Keep in mind, too,
part
Jim
of the
Jordan.
election interference plan.
Jim Jordan's also looking into Fani Willis and trying to find out about what she was up to and try to get all this information that she's reluctant to give over, although she swears she's cooperating. Ashley, it's going to be a busy day. We're going to be watching you.
Thanks, it is. Ashley. Good to see you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.